As Indonesia's new president gets to grips with the job, he makes the decision to devolve significant powers to the regions.
Unfortunately, decentralisation made the work of the Ministry of Forestry and the Ministry of Environment and our own work a lot harder.
Saya sudah bilang tadi ya, korupsi itu ada di mana-mana, nepotisme, kolusi gitu ya, pelanggaran hukum dibiarkan, sehingga otonomi daerah ini alih-alih bisa menjadi perbaikan, tapi yang terjadi adalah semakin merebaknya KKN ini, praktek KKN ini bahkan sampai di level yang paling rendah gitu, sehingga kita tadinya punya raja-raja koruptor cuma ada di Jakarta, tapi sekarang hampir di setiap provinsi, kabupaten ada.
CITES is an international treaty signed by most of the world's governments. It aims to prevent animal and plant species becoming endangered or extinct through trade.
Karena itu salah satu alat kita untuk melindungi salah satu konservasi jenis-jenis yang sudah mulai punah. Karena itu diakui secara internasional dan diverifikasi. Ada forumnya di internasional ya, itu. Dan kita juga harus memberikan laporan. Jadi bagus.
The NGOs have an appointment to meet the new Minister of Forestry.
He was running late, and suddenly he came out of his office, realised we were there, and he basically said, "Walk with me, Faith. Walk and talk. Tell me, what is it? What do you need?" By the time we got into the lift and downstairs, his car was waiting, and I hadn't quite got to my point. And so we jumped in the car. My colleague was in the front. I wanted a commitment from him that he would unilaterally list Ramin on CITES Appendix 3. And I explained to him, by doing this, there would be some oversight, there'd be some regulation, there'd be something there that would exist to be able to try and control this hemorrhaging of this valuable timber from the park. And he agreed. I realised then I needed more than just his word. I rummaged around in my handbag and I found this napkin and a ballpoint pen, and I got it out and I got him to sign to that commitment. I was thrilled. We got to his appointment. I got out of the car, and that was it. It was job done.
The government announces a moratorium on the logging of Ramin. And a few months later, as agreed by the minister, lists Ramin on Appendix 3 of CITES. The Malaysian government responds by submitting a reservation. A reservation is a mechanism enabling a CITES member country not to observe or comply with part or all of an Appendix 3 listing. Ramin trees grow in the coastal peat swamp forests of Borneo, Sumatra and peninsular Malaysia. Since the 60s, Malaysia's timber industry has been based on the logging and processing of Ramin, a strong blonde hardwood. Malaysia's annual available supply of Ramin for processing is reduced by around 80% in the last 10 years. Despite this, however, exports of Ramin from Malaysia, sawn timber and finished products have increased significantly in the last couple of years.
Of course, they suddenly had a good supply of cheap, illegal timber coming across from neighbouring Indonesia. By 2001, we were very keen to follow the trail, the Ramin trail, you might call it, for the Ramin that's been illegally logged in Indonesia. We knew a lot of that was being smuggled into neighbouring Malaysia. Malaysia had a very big timber industry, and Ramin was a key species in that. So we decided to start looking at the supply chain and the smuggling routes that Ramin was taking to get from Indonesia to Malaysia.
After 18 months of investigations and months of putting the information together, EIA and Telapak release a follow-up report.
On just one day, EIA and Telapak investigators witnessed more than 30 Indonesian vessels carrying illegal logs arriving in the port of Muar in Malaysia. The boats were seen passing a police post and stopping at a customs jetty. once again showing official complicity. In Batu Pahat, EIA and Telapak investigators found ramen logs which had recently been imported from Sumatra in Indonesia. Such trade is illegal under the CITES listing and illustrates that Malaysia continues to flout its international obligations.
The scale was just mind-blowing in a way, and it was all being done in the open. There was no attempt to be clandestine, which shows that the Malaysian authorities weren't willing to act on this because their businesses were profiting from the destruction of neighbouring Indonesia's forests.
Given the fact that CITES had just listed Indonesian ramen on CITES Appendix 3, we were actually completely shocked at the fact that nothing had changed.
But also in terms of economics, this sudden glut of ramen that was being smuggled via Malaysia was depressing the price on the international market because it's simple oversupply.
In part as a result of the work of EIA, Telapak and others, some governments around the world start to grasp the scale and seriousness of the explosion in illegal logging and the destruction of the world's remaining forests.
At the time, the World Bank were organising a whole series of, rather staid technocratic meetings on forest law enforcement. And I thought, this is an opportunity, to really, if we could jump on these, get hold of the agenda, we could change these into real game-changing dialogues and discussions with the real actors. Together with the Americans, I have to say, we managed to add the word governance, forest law enforcement governance, to the title.
The East Asia Ministerial Conference on Forest Law Enforcement and Governance opens in Bali. Hosted by the Indonesian government and the World Bank, and part funded by DFID and USAID, 150 delegates from 20 countries arrive in Denpasar. They represent NGOs, governments, UN agencies and the private sector. The stage is set for significant change.
And we managed to get high-level segment where consumer countries like the UK and the US and Europe would send high-level representation, because we reckon we were part of the problem, as well as top-level government officials from Indonesia, from China, and to have a large participation of civil society organisations.
The delegates are gathered for several days of discussion and debate on the future of Southeast Asia's remaining forest.
So at the end of the first day, we were all hanging out and swimming. Some people were having drinks at the bar, and there were televisions around the place, and we suddenly realised that there was something extraordinary happening.
And suddenly on the TV screens, we witnessed what people all over the world were witnessing, which was the Twin Towers coming down. It was 9/11, and we were shocked, absolutely shocked.
Almost immediately, the Indonesian police arrive. They surround and seal off the conference hotel to protect the delegates inside.
And so at that moment, it was decided that the high-level segment would be pulled forward, we would shorten the conference, but that no one would abandon the conference. Indeed, none of us were able to leave the hotel anyway for the next 24 hours. And so the conference carried on.
In the spirit of global unity, all but one of the participating countries, including China, sign a declaration of undertaking and intent on forest law enforcement and governance. It becomes known as FLEG. Malaysia refuses to sign.
So the conference went way beyond trees. It was to actually address the core issues of corruption, land rights, tenure. It was looking at illegal trade, illegal logging, but it went way beyond the trees. And that was really significant. By having these issues out in the open, we are actually getting governments to acknowledge that there was a problem in the first place.
A couple of months later, the Indonesian government implements a log export ban. From this point onwards, only sawn or processed timber can legally be exported from the country.
This was definitely good news, but as with all these things, would it be enforced would be the question. The big problem and the big loophole in all of this was that although this ban was for exports from Indonesia, it was still legal for Malaysia to import the logs.
Can I welcome everybody to this signing ceremony?
The UK and Indonesia signed the Memorandum of Understanding. They've been negotiating for over 2 years. The purpose of the MOU is to cut or curtail any involvement that the UK might have in the destruction of Indonesia's remaining forests.
The MOU was a great idea. And what it was the UK saying, look, Indonesia, you don't have to do this on your own. You know, the UK was part of the problem as well. And that MOU basically provided a way forward to look at this issue from both ends.
Smile.
However, the MOU also includes some aspects of trade.
And this puts the European Union's nose out of joint. Trade was a European Union issue and responsibility, not a member state responsibility at that time. However, it obliged them to engage and to look at what they would do to control the illegal timber coming into their bigger area from tropical forests across the world, including Indonesia.
Embarrassed by further video investigations by EIA, Telapak and others, Malaysia's federal government introduces a ban on the import of logs from Indonesia.
Dan ini sebetulnya merupakan cikal bakal atau salah satu contoh di mana negara konsumen dan negara produsen bekerja bersama gitu loh, mempunyai legislasi yang saling melengkapi untuk mengatasi illegal logging dan perdagangan kayu ilegal antar negara atau cross border.
But the Malaysian decision did not apply to the province of Sarawak in Malaysia, which is on Borneo. And so the land route for smuggling of logs across from Kalimantan, which is Indonesian Borneo, across into Sarawak, Malaysian Borneo, remained open.